Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of Toasted Talk. We are not doing a siesta at this time, but going to be celebrating what the Spanish Grand Prix was. Honestly, prior to the race, everyone was, this is a Spanish siesta. It's going to be a very boring race. But turns out that was not the case this weekend. Today, we're going to do a quick post-race review of what are the exciting things that happened. What do we think are the reasons for certain things that happened and how we have loved it to not have happened. For that, we have another great fan amongst us, Naren. Hey, Naren, how are you doing?
Hey, Vivek, thanks for having me on the show. Yeah, like how you told, it was not a fiesta, but a fiesta of treats. And yeah, it was an exciting race. Incidentally, I had a friend who wanted to watch this race together, but we could not. And then we cribbed over why we could not watch the race together. So it was so much of fun.
Got it. Since Naren, you mentioned that obviously it was an exciting race. Top two key highlights that you want to start off with from the race weekend.
The top two key highlights that I will start is how the midfielders were 11, 12, 13 in quali made up positions in the actual race and they gained points. So that would be my highlight. Be it Yuki Tsunoda or Esteban Ocon or when Mick Schumacher for that matter. They gained huge places, 3-4 places, and then they gained points. So they showed immense pace, and that would be my top highlight. I would also like to brilliantly say how George Russell brilliantly defended Max Verstappen through the course of the race, and even though Max had his own problems of DRS not working, but that was a brilliant defending from from George. And finally, me being a Checho fan myself, I was a bit disappointed on seeing how the team orders played a part today for the last part of the race or for the most part of the race. But then, yeah, there's a team sport and it is what it is. So all these three things would make this race or had made the race fun to watch.
Yeah, no, I agree. This was a literary novel. There's this book called Lemony Snicketts, A Series of Unfortunate Incidents. Uh, Yesterday's race pretty much summed that up. Whether we start off with how LeClerc had almost 30-second lead over the second car for the first 1/3 of the race, and it seemed like Ferrari had this game in the bag. And then that frantic, oh no, oh God, this is happening, this isn't happening. And we suddenly saw Leclerc was out of the race. Max Verstappen, temper soaring high in the first 1/3 of the race. We can't even get DRS to work. Like, what am I doing here? To him winning the race at the end. The tailwinds playing a big role. For a second, like I said, I thought we're all celebrating Mazepin for some reason. But we had a lot of cars spin out, especially around the turn 4, because of the huge headwinds over there. Verstappen slipped up. Bad luck for Carlos Sainz. That really shook up the entire order of the race to the point which the midfielders were able to take in a lot of gains. But another very interesting point is the Spanish Grand Prix was after a break, which allowed all the teams to go through a lot of upgrades. And I think we saw some of the positives of that. What are your highlights? I mean, Mercedes, for example, like George Russell had his elbows out, but one of the key reasons was, I think the upgrades played a role where he was able to be there in that position. In spite of that obviously brilliant driving, for me, he was the driver of the day. But the fact that Mercedes was able to upgrade to a level where he could compete over there, though I would also want to hear your thoughts on relatively Hamilton's performance.
I understood that the commentator was saying like how Lewis had a magic button on. They had a button which can turn 4% off on and off. The major part of the upgrades most of the cars did were related to how the air vortices are being tunneled from the under, so they reduce the purposing. And so, given all that upgrades that they have done, George did show brilliantly today. And there was also the other side of the upgrades where Aston Martin were called the green Red Bull, like how they were called the pink Mercedes last time. They are being called the green Red Bull, and side pods and everything were a little similar. But I would say overall, some the upgrades did work. Like for example, Mercedes. For some the upgrades didn't work. Like for example, McLaren. McLaren had a new floor, but then the floor was damaged by Lando himself, and they had to rework on the floor. So it is win-win situation for some. It is a win-lose situation for the others, and it's a lose-lose situation for the others. Since it is the first race after the updates are being gone, I would say we give it 1 or 2 races. Probably the next circuit, which is Monaco, a tight street circuit, will really show how the upgrades are being paired out and what is the potential for each car.
What that brings us to is another very interesting thing that happened this weekend, I would say, is as we get through rating through each of the drivers and we can go team wise, brings us to another very important question that has been an unwritten rule where we have drivers who are considered number 1 and number 2 within the team. And we often see, while they shouldn't really be doing it, we do see some sort of favoritism strategies playing out, which provide one person a little better chance or very clearly a better chance to score well. And I think it became a little more obvious, especially for Red Bull, where yes, Verstappen is number 1 in terms of being the current reigning world champion, in terms of being Red Bull's number 1, because Checo's been considered as the nice guy, the wingman. But specific to yesterday's race, it was Verstappen who made the mistake. It was Verstappen who had DRS issues. It was Checo who could take it ahead. But then Checo was asked to swap positions at the end. And he mentioned that he wasn't happy about it, but he did it for the team and said, we'll talk more about it later. What are your thoughts about having this hierarchy in teams, and can teams do a better job at managing that, or should they be even managing that? Should it just be pure racing?
I take that in 2 different perspectives. One from the perspective of the team principal, the other from the perspective of the driver. With respect to the team principal or the team put together, swapping positions or letting Max through in turn 1 after he had a gain is the right choice to do, considering that Max is aiming for his 2nd title. And it is also good that considering that Checo is far behind the team, the individual standing makes Max the obvious choice to swap. It's not been happening this year. It's been happening even last year when Bottas was crying over the radio. Bottas was crying over the radio in the French Grand Prix. Not just this year, even in the Barrichello Schumacher time, it was happening. From a team principal's perspective, what they did seems to be correct, strategically correct. But from a team driver's perspective, it was not morally correct. What they did was, and I was actually going through the radio of Checo specifically during the entire course of the race, and his lap timings were soaring. He was doing his average sector time was 27 seconds, while Max was at 28, which means he had a good solid 1 second lead over Max. So he was also gaining over Max and the other drivers, but unfortunately the team had to go, which I felt was not morally correct. But hey, it is like, from a driver's perspective, if you race Max, you get bashed by the team principal. If you don't race Max, you get bashed by the fans. So you get bashed by someone else at the end of the day. It's about which bashing is comfortable for you, and that which you can take least hit with. So,
That's an interesting take. But then using that logic, I'd be interested, what are your thoughts on Mercedes? because you have, a multi-world champion. But when you look at 2022 performance, you have George Russell, who is the only driver, not just Mercedes, the only driver to finish top 5 so far. He got a podium also today. So if you look at performance in the Mercedes, George Russell should actually be pick number 1 for Mercedes for this year.
With respect to George being number 1, he's just being promoted from Williams to Mercedes, and I would say he's just a rookie into Mercedes, not into Formula One, but into Mercedes. So he's just learning his way. And I believe we discussed this already, that he's already been in a car that was struggling for points. To right now being in a car, with the press of a button, you can gain points. So he knows how to tactically use those and gain advantage. But I would not say Lewis, on the other hand, is lower. Lewis has skills, but for some reason, he's unable to perform with the car which he has right now. Considering that, I would say Toto, as a team principal, is just doing the right thing of letting them be themselves, and whoever wins wins. Is his motto, I believe, this year. Aiming for a constructor is a little difficult, but they're just trying to go for the gains.
That brings us to probably the most hyped up team at the start of the year, Ferrari, right? And Charles Leclerc has actually done so well till this DNF happened. What are your thoughts there with respect to, I think Sainz has been, I guess, unlucky to some extent. To some extent, he's also made a lot of mistakes, which has opened up the gap between him and Leclerc to sort of, based on performance, you could clearly say that Ferrari can say that, okay, based on performance, I'm going to let Leclerc be my number 1 and Sainz be my number 2. So that issue sort of solved there. But if you look at overall performance from where the hype Ferrari started off the year with, to Leclerc just lost his leadership in the World Championship, and there's still not that confidence in the team to say that, we can take on the Red Bull in a racing situation.
With respect to Ferrari, Matthias playing a very, very safe game, I would say, with respect to measuring his worth and giving what is required. So even during the pre-race, and when some commentator asked Matthias, "Are you good with racing in RB?" He said, "Yeah, we are good. We are trying." So I would say that that is one, and the other thing is that since Spain being the home ground of Carlos Sainz, there was peer pressure for him to perform well in his home race. So same goes with Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen was aggressive, so in turn 4 he had a bit of tailwind. If you see, we had 20 drivers on the grid and only 2 suffered from tailwind spin-off. So that really shows what kind of pressure Carlos Sainz is being put in this high performance car. He is trying to learn from his mistakes, but is he trying to not repeat the same mistakes again? I don't think so, because if you see all the mistakes that are happening, it was either crash, or he crashed into someone, or he crashed directly into the barriers. So I would say, if say Carlos Sainz was near me and I have to give him advice, which I cannot, I would say, boss, cool down. We still have a lot more races to go. Don't put pressure on yourself just because Charles Leclerc is performing. With respect to the team put together, they are doing a brilliant job. They've been waiting for this year since 2007, after Kimi won the world champion, the last training champion in Ferrari. So they are aiming at clinching the constructor champion. They have a brilliant driver. They just have to capitalize the opportunity and not just put peer pressure on Sainz.
I think from that perspective, obviously home ground pressure, which Leclerc is going to face next week as we move to Monaco. And he also has the jinx of crashing cars there. So hopefully he's able to break that jinx, because Ferrari really needs consistency, I think, to get them going. They have the car. The qualifyings have shown us that they have the speed in them. Now they just need the race results to turn in that direction for them. But I think what Spain has actually shown us is, as we move towards the second half of the season, we might actually see 3 teams fighting it out for the Constructors' Championship at least. Drivers depends on consistency. There might be gaps. It's still a tight fight. But I think Constructors, for sure, we're going to see a really tight fight between at least 3 of the constructors, and an equally tight fight between the midfield, because this is one year where I think most of the constructors have already got some points on the board. And Haas takes a big credit to that, Kevin Magnussen to be specific, because Mick is still this close to getting it. Even in yesterday's race, he reached 8th, the highest that he could get to, but then towards the end, he had to fall out of the scoring range as his tires got really old, or as the commentator said, his tires have lost interest. So overall, I think, no doubt, a super exciting race that we had last weekend. Any thoughts from this weekend's race in terms of what are you looking forward to next weekend at Monaco?
Next weekend, Monaco has a very long history of great races, even great racers crashing out. So I just hope we don't have any such big crashes from the start of practice till the end of the race, which is very unlikely to happen, because it's a very, very tight circuit. But given the fact that everybody is trying to perform as much as possible, so I'm just going empty-handed to the race, not having any expectations on any particular person or any particular team, because they are really fighting hard. That doesn't mean that includes every team, right from Ferrari to Haas. So this I would say Miami is not the street circuit where you could prove your mettle. As Baku, Monaco are the standard street circuits that you can prove your mettle. So I'm hoping for an exciting race, and people don't make it boring. That's all I can say.
I mean, the stakes are obviously higher, because the other news that came out is we're going to have only 22 races this year. They are not going to replace the Russian Grand Prix. So teams have one less race to factor in from a scoring perspective. Obviously, that could play into the strategy of engines. And this year, I think the biggest factor that's played out so far, apart from drivers figuring their way around, has been getting used to the car and the reliability issues around it, because it's been something that all the drivers, or at least I would say all the constructors, have seen in one of their cars facing some issue or the other as they figure out how do they go about, and especially managing tires. Spanish Grand Prix started off with potentially one-stop strategy, quickly switched into a 2 and a 3-stop strategy for most teams. So I think that's another thing which is adding to the excitement this year compared to last year, where you just knew that all cars are going to play out here and here. And once in a while, someone would try something different. But this year, everyone is second guessing everyone else, because no one knows how their cars are performing, how the tires are performing for the new setup. So that's added a whole new twist to it. Monaco as a true street circuit, a lot of historical significance, should add a lot of twists and turns, literally and figuratively, for all of us on the F1 track. So once again, thanks a lot, Naren, for taking your time out and sharing your insights on the race that was. For everyone else listening in, do share, like, subscribe. The Toast Network, the sporting network for the fans, by the fans. This is Toast to Talk. We have Toast to Toss, our cricketing concern. Sorry about that. But with that, thanks a lot, everyone. Take care.
I believe the Monaco favor is already kicked in for you.
Clearly. I need to rest before I can shout my lungs out on that weekend. Thanks once again. Take care.